The cause of death for Mr. Gene Hackman, aged 95 years, is hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributory factor.
When news broke about the deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife inside their Santa Fe estate, the explanation felt almost pre-written. An elderly man in his 90s, living in isolation after the loss of his partner. That version spread quickly because it made sense. His wife's death was attributed to a viral infection, his heart failure. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious.
A sheriff's department statement said foul play was not suspected, but authorities said the deaths were, quote, suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation.
But the moment investigators stepped onto the property, that narrative began to fall apart. Not loudly, not all at once, but in small details that refused to align. Federal presence arrived earlier than expected. Security systems were far more complex than necessary. And beneath all of it, there was a structure no one had ever documented. What looked like a quiet ending wasn't just incomplete. It was covering something far more deliberate.
This investigation started on February 26th with the discovery of Mr. Hackman and Miss Arakawa and their dog at their residence.
A timeline that didn't add up. The first real fracture came from timing. Investigators determined that Hackman and his wife had not died together. There was a gap of 7 days between their deaths. 7 days where a 95-year-old man with known heart issues remained inside a sealed estate. No recorded calls for help, no emergency contact, no outreach to family or medical services. But the security data made it harder to ignore. On the day his wife died, the estate's internal surveillance cameras were manually disabled. At the same time, the outer perimeter systems, motion sensors, alarms, thermal detection remained fully active. That combination suggests someone intentionally removed visibility from the inside while maintaining maximum control over the outside. Inside, investigators found furniture shifted and safes opened. Not the stillness of someone immobilized by grief, but activity with purpose. Behavioral analysts concluded this was not panic or disorientation. It was structured, controlled, deliberate behavior. And it pointed to something beneath the house that Hackman was still actively managing. What LiDAR revealed beneath the estate. Investigators deployed LiDAR scanning technology, laser pulses that map hidden structures beneath the ground without excavation. A large underground void extended from behind a wall in Hackman's private library, descending deep into the bedrock. No county documentation, no permits, no construction history. Officially, it didn't exist. The entrance was concealed behind a bookshelf with a heavy, manually operated locking system built from steel and wood. No digital signals, no electronic traces, designed to avoid detection entirely. Inside, agents found 2 distinct sections. The upper level matched mid-20th century military construction standards, but deeper down, the materials disappeared, replaced by rough stone walls carved by hand, much older. This wasn't just a hidden bunker. It was an ancient structure that had been reinforced, integrated into the estate, and deliberately concealed. Hackman didn't build this. He found it and chose to maintain it. The forensic detail that changed everything. The turning point came from the mechanical locking system at the tunnel entrance. Investigators expected signs of long-term disuse. Instead, they found fresh abrasion marks inside the gears. Not months old, not weeks, days. Those marks aligned precisely with the 7-day window between the two deaths. Hackman had physically opened the tunnel, operated heavy locks, and descended into that underground space. At 95 years old, with declining health. Then came the DNA results. Biological material recovered from the deepest part of the tunnel indicated active biological conditions, not residue from the past, not contamination. Something current. The exact classification has not been publicly released, but the findings triggered an immediate escalation. The case was pulled from standard channels and moved into national security classification. That doesn't happen for routine anomalies. It happens when the implications extend beyond a private residence. The pattern that couldn't be explained away. Individually, each piece of evidence could be rationalized. Together, aligned against verified timestamps and system logs, they formed a pattern that resisted those explanations. A woman dies. Cameras go dark. The perimeter locks down. No outside contact is made. The tunnel is accessed. Fresh mechanical use is confirmed. Biological activity is detected below ground. All of it in sequence, without deviation. That shows intention, not coincidence. Hackman was not reacting randomly. He was following a process, actions carried out in a specific order, suggesting familiarity, repetition, and prior rehearsal. Not something discovered in his final days. Something he had been doing for a long time. The chamber at the bottom. At the base of the tunnel, investigators entered a chamber matching no standard classification in civil, military, or geological records. The floor had been deliberately leveled and engraved with complex astronomical coordinates. Crates held metal components with no visible welds, manufactured as single solid pieces, using methods not commonly documented in early industrial work. But what drew the most attention was the communication system. A thick cable ran through the bedrock into the chamber, connected to a device designed not for sound, but for vibration. It captured low-frequency movements through solid stone and transmitted them to a listening point in Hackman's living quarters. He wasn't monitoring voices. He was listening to pressure, to movement, to something interacting with the rock itself in measurable, repeatable patterns. For years, possibly decades, he had been tracking whatever existed on the other side of the chamber wall. The door that was never meant to open. At the far end of the chamber stood a door that changed how everything else was interpreted. Aged carbon steel. No handle, no hinges, no locking mechanism. Every seam sealed with continuous welds from the outside, with no indication of later modification. Doors are designed to be opened, from one side or the other. They provide access, exit, control. This door provided none of that. No contingency, no override. It wasn't built to protect what was inside. It was built to ensure whatever was inside stayed there, permanently. Once that was understood, the rest of the estate made sense differently. The security systems, the isolation, the silence in those final days. It no longer looked like a man protecting his privacy. It looked like a man maintaining containment, fully aware of what failure would expose. The response that raised more questions. Federal teams arrived with equipment capable of breaching the door. They had the tools. They had the access. They chose not to use them. The site was locked down, information classified, records restricted. Land ownership shifted under government control. Even local reports about low-frequency vibrations recorded years earlier were removed from accessible databases. That kind of response isn't improvised. It suggests protocols already in place, which leads to an uncomfortable possibility. This wasn't something the government discovered for the first time. It was something they already knew about. The final 7 days. When everything is placed together, the final week of Hackman's life takes on a different meaning. He didn't call for help, not because he couldn't, because he chose not to. Calling anyone would have brought people into the house, unaware of what lay beneath the library. Instead, he shut down visibility, maintained the perimeter, accessed the tunnel, verified whatever needed to be verified, then returned to the surface, listening until he couldn't anymore. What this actually means. The DNA evidence didn't just reveal that the tunnel was active. It confirmed that Hackman's involvement was ongoing. This wasn't an accidental discovery he ignored. It was something he maintained, protected, managed. That's why the findings are bad news for him. Not in terms of reputation, but responsibility. The evidence doesn't describe a man caught in circumstances beyond his control. It describes a man who understood exactly what was beneath his home and chose, repeatedly, to keep it contained. And whatever was down there, it's still there.